Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey, chapter 313. It is the first day of the week, aka the Kamehameha workout. I am feeling pretty good right now, very excited for this workout. But anyways, to the main subject matter for today. We are continuing on with our series and looking at possibly the final of the seven virtues, looking at the seven heavenly virtues. We may be doing the last episode, well, second to last episode in this, and actually looking at the final of the seven of these, which is humility. Now, humility, I didn't save this one for last. I probably should have saved the one I did last week, this one right here, aka chastity, for last, because that's probably like the craziest and most important, but that one is a little bit different. We'll get to that in the rankings, but that's the next episode. But for this one, we'll be talking about humility. Now, humility, something that is very, very rare nowadays. Not necessarily as rare as chastity, as something like that, but still, the ownership and the knowing that you can only get so far because of your own abilities is something that is lost on a magnitude of people. I think the internet has made it so people think that they can overreach way more than they actually can. It's a very unfortunate reality about something like humility. Understanding what your limits are and saying, hey, this just isn't my realm. There are certain things that are like that some people won't, just don't understand and probably never will. So in today's episode, we're going to look at humility, the lack thereof that there is a lot of in the world, and some that is still there. I would like to say that how I practice it, I'll go into that because I'll pause on that because I do want to talk about that in the voiceover. But humility in general is something that is a little tough. It's a tough one to practice, not because of any outside influences, but of course your own, really. You have to really know yourself and know what you're capable of and kind of almost not necessarily underestimate what you can do because you wouldn't want to put your own limit like that, but more so along the lines of know when you are going out of your a range of what like having that self-awareness to understand that there is a boundary that you can get to, and then if you go past it, that you are in no man's land and you are starting to get into the point where you are just not there. Your ego is driving you past that wall. It's that entire idea. So we're gonna be looking at that. We're gonna be looking at humility in general, just generally who genuinely has it now, because it feels like not necessarily certain groups of people have it, but it is more of a rare thing to find. And when you do, you're like, oh, okay, this is great. This is excellent. You almost want to see it. And it's interesting because you can almost even see it like when companies have you even want it from companies where they're like, we're sorry, we fucked up, because that's how seriously it's lacking in a lot of different areas, because a lot of the times companies will just say fuck you and move on. What are you going to do about it? But I don't even want to get into the implications of companies and all that other stuff, but it's just the idea that humility is so lacking in a lot of stuff in today's world, that we just even examples of popular people that are trying to get our money is so seen as such a good idea or such a good thing in comparison to when in reality everybody should be practicing it in theory, at least to a certain degree or another. Sure, there are certain people that are just too fucked in the head to be able to even do that, but we'll talk more about that and a few other things when we get to the race. Alright, so started this day off with dips, which were pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter at hand here today. Humility, the final of all of the seven virtues that we will be looking at. Humility, noun, freedom from pride or arrogance, the quality or state of being humble. So, before we continue on, this is obviously the other side of pride. There is some level of pride that people should have within themselves, but at a certain point, there are places in individuals' lives where they just got to accept that they are not the end-all be-all source for certain things, obviously. Even those who know everything truly think they know everything. There's a certain level of humility that you have to have in places. Like, I'm not saying I would ever know anything. I have this channel, but this is just me speaking into the wind, into the world, really. I would never ever think that I know 100% about anything at all. I am a student of the game, aka I am very aware that my knowledge on certain things is not where it could be, and that I could always be learning more. And I think that that is the main thing about
humility or being humble. I will say being humble, basically the same thing in a way, which we will get into in a second. But I think that most people understand the entire idea of that there is a certain limit to not necessarily your skills or your knowledge of certain things, but more so along the lines of where you stop and where you need to grow forth from that. I think that many people understand it, not everybody, because there is a certain sect of person, aka more of a person that is narcissistic, that won't allow their pride to be hurt in any way, shape, or form. Those types of people do not understand humility. They don't understand the idea of the fact that there are limits to what they can do. But just because there are certain limits on certain things, it doesn't necessarily mean there are hard limits, because I don't believe in hard limits on certain things like that. I believe that there are certain capacities that you may or may not have for knowledge on certain subject matters, but at the same time, you can expand them and continue to grow them as much as you can. And because I don't believe that you're just kind of screwed with what you have, obviously. I'm not necessarily a believer of any real limit like that, but more so acknowledging that you've reached a capacity that you already contain, and then possibly looking forward to expanding it, because the expansion of that domain should be relatively easy if you are willing to understand that there is a limit and you can grow it from there. Obviously, this is the point where people will not do that. They will not humble themselves in order to make it so that they realize that they are limited in these capacities, and thus they will continue moving into what is essentially the vast nether of their own abilities, but in reality, it's not going anywhere. It's like the black hole where you're basically getting ripped apart. Now, speaking of humble, I do want to look at that for a second. Humble, objective, not proud or haughty, not arrogant or assertive. The main reason why I wanted to bring up humbleness is because, or being humble, is because I think that more and more as social media has become a prominent figure or a prominent part in life, I think that the ability for the regular person to be humble about certain things grows lesser and lesser. Now, I don't want to just blame social media on things, because that's usually 90% of these fucking videos. But at the same time, social media allows a person who isn't humble to be able to get into the forefront of whatever popular chain that they may or may not be trying to do. And thus their prideful nature is rewarded versus the humble and lowly person who's trying to do something with a decent level of care and willingness to do it the right way, quote unquote, whatever that may or may not be, because that is very, very broad. But I think generally understanding for this topic, I think we can understand what I mean by that. But it doesn't necessarily reward those who are humble in their ways of going about things. And thus, I feel like a lot of the time, those who are very prideful will be ahead of the game. But there is a certain point where if people realize it, because it always happens, where these people who are very prideful, who do not take any humility in the fact that they've gotten very far with whatever they're trying to do on social media, usually get caught in some type of way, shape, or form that makes it so that they lose all of their credibility, because they chose not to humble themselves and allowed their pride to roam free, and thus making their own downfall, because usually the pride is what really keeps people staying relevant, because they always show themselves, because their pride is just too powerful in order for them to really connect with the regular person, which is half of the other half of social media, which is why we like to see when people and or companies or anything like that has some level of humility, of an idea of, hey, we fucked up, or hey, we messed up, or hey, we understand that this is happening, let's just take care of this type of stuff. Because I feel like a lot of people want to see that, even if it is a company, because companies don't deserve the goodwill that they try to get, but sometimes there's just good companies out there that you would want to do business with, so it makes sense. But even then, you don't see this as much with people that are popular on social media, but that is also because their pride is entangled with the numbers that they're seeing on the screen, so thus they can't lower themselves, quote unquote, into the regular person ideal in that sense. So it is an interesting thing to see, because you can obviously tell when there's a level of humility to somebody's a character, and you can understand that brings them down to make them a normal person. They just happen to have this blessing that they may or may not have grown through hard work and dedication. But some of the time you won't see that. You'll see the other side of it, where the prideful, vengeful bastard is the one that happens to also be popular for some godforsaken reason.
And we're back. And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercise not filmed, none. Exercise skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. I'm going to make this quick because I have been busy seeing that one of my favorite internet shows just got canceled. So anyways, to the main subject matter for today. Humility, one part of the 7 virtues, which is something that we have finally reached the end of the road, surprisingly. Humility is something that I feel like is lacking in a lot of people. And in other words, of accountability, realistically, you know your bounds to the point where, you aren't overextending yourself. Obviously, you have to understand that sometimes there are places where you may just be wrong, and that's fine. As long as you can look at it and admit it, that's the best part. But hopefully you can do that. There are people out there in this world that do not do that. In fact, they cannot believe that they can be wrong. Those are the types of people you need to ignore, move on, and completely shun from in your life. And if you are that person, understand why, and maybe figure out maybe why people don't like you. Maybe understand that, and have some self-awareness into your own situations. I feel like humility is something that you will occasionally see, and you can tell when people are genuine about it, when they fuck up and they know they fucked up, and then they'll say it and they'll actually give a genuine apology, instead of rather than trying to save face and or trying to sweep away whatever is happening in order to make sure that they still look good at the end, to try to get the broadest audience of people to make sure that they still like them. I think there is many examples of this. So it's not very hard to see it. I mean, even in small things where it's not even necessarily even in social media, you'll see these types of people that will just let their ego take them to a place that it goes far beyond where they're actually capable of. And most of the time they make an ass of themselves, but sometimes they don't. And sometimes they get into positions of power because of the ego. And all of a sudden you have to deal with this person head on because all of a sudden they are in a position of power, which sucks, but it is what it is, because usually something will happen. But that's kind of a different story for a different day. But humility itself is something that I feel like most people should have, at least somewhat understand that you have your weak spots, the things that you aren't necessarily good at, and make sure that, you try to make sure that they don't take you over realistically. I think that this is probably like a good, slightly fitting end to this series, talking about them, in the sense that humility is one of those things that I feel like it's something so simple and easy that I feel like a lot of people can do in today's society. There's no real societal pressure for you to not be have some humility about yourself or what you do and your abilities and all that other stuff. I feel like it's all on you. There isn't necessarily a societal push around you to try to take it away from you or push certain things onto you. This comes from within. It's very much a self-centered thing in the sense that it comes from you, so you don't need somebody else. You just need some foresight, some self-thought, and some self-reflection to understand where you are and where you are within the world itself. It's not necessarily too hard. So, with that being said, though, tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. This one concludes the series so far as the 7 virtues. Next week we will be tiering them, doing a tier list of all of the 7 virtues. We will see how that goes. But anyways, please leave your comments and thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. I will be back tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy. Stay safe out there. Stay warm. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.